I don't think you can become wealthy with your own money, especially your own after-tax money, because you just get too much chewed up. So you have to find a way, if you want to be wealthy, you have to find a way to responsibly use other people's money. Hello and welcome back to the Main Street Patriot Podcast. My name is Jimmy Vreeland and I am the Main Street Patriot. Why am I the Main Street Patriot? Because here's the deal. Real estate, single-family real estate, is a great asset class to build a bunch of wealth, but it is unsophisticated at the current time. And as you see the headlines and you see everything, Wall Street is trying to get onto Main Street. So what's the Main Street Patriot doing and his team doing? We are carving out rentals so that regular people can still become landlords and still get wealthy inside real estate before the big institutions take it all out. So we're out in the streets fighting for you guys, and then we're on this podcast talking about it. And today's topic is one of the most misunderstood topics out there in real estate investing, especially for newbies. And then hopefully I get a bunch of controversial comments on this because I'm going to have a very contrarian view. But what we're going to talk about today is cash flow. So I'm Jimmy Vreeland, the Main Street Patriot. That man you hear laughing in the background is my producer, Jake. Jake, what's up?
Yo, dude, it's good to be here with you. I think we are going to get some comments about this one. People live and die by cash flow for a reason, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, they always want to argue about it. They want to argue about 0.003 returns, and I hate conversations like that, but we'll do this podcast. This will be a fun podcast, but the comments, I'm sure they're going to be somewhat annoying, but they create controversy and build the brand, whatever.
Yeah, here we go. So,
but Jake, before we get into it, if you are listening to this, I know a bunch of our investors who are always around, they're listening to this, but if you're a new person and you think real estate, you want to add this to your portfolio, but you know you don't have the time and you would like to work with a team, it might be a good time to hop on with a team member of mine and go through, see what you're trying to do and see if we'd be a good fit. So in the show notes, we'll have a call for you guys to set up an appointment with somebody on my team to see if real estate and doing it in a passive manner is a good place for you to start investing.
Nice. So cash flow, big topic.
Yes, I don't even know where to start, but here's my big thing. Everybody's like, interest rates are high. There's no good investments out there. And that's true if you're only looking for cash flow. But this is like a catch-22, Jake. Let's see how much you've been paying attention to the previous podcast. Who should be flipping and who should be wholesaling and who should be investing for the long term?
Well, based on everything that I've learned so far, if you don't have a big cash reserve, you can't be buying a whole lot of houses. You won't be able to do it. So you got to be flipping.
If you don't have a cash machine, if you don't have something consistently annually putting 175 to 225K a year in your pocket, then if you want to be in real estate, you should probably be flipping or wholesaling because you need to increase your active income. But Everybody wants cash flow because Kiyosaki said this is passive income. But here is a quick thing from a mentor of mine, Jason Medley. Passive income comes after hyperactive active income. I just said it, Jake. It's going to hit all the socials, everything, and every guru who's selling rentals right now. I think I kind of burst their bubble because, you should get into real estate for passive income. It's like, yes, you should. Yes, it does create a ton of passive income, but it's a matter of time. Mm-hmm. And then we should do another podcast about the time value of money. I'm going to write that down as a note. I don't think we're going to be able to get into it that deeply today, but we're going to spend the next kind of 30 to 40 minutes talking why cash flow isn't BS, but it's just something that comes on later. And then you should never buy an asset based on its first year cash flow returns. It's just counterintuitive. And here's the other thing. So if you have a bunch of active income, so you have the cash reserves to start buying assets and taking on debt, you generally don't have a cash flow problem. You generally have a tax leverage. You generally have a tax and a leverage issue and an inflation issue. Because if you're bringing in that amount of cash, you don't want your cash to sit in cash because you know it's going to get chewed up by inflation. So you have to find some investment vehicle that, one, you can use leverage, two, has great tax advantages, and three, is going to appreciate at least with inflation and protect your dollar. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So but that only if you have the cash machine are you able to take advantage of real estate to do that. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to take on debt unless you have a large cash reserve. So, generally, if you don't have a cash machine, then you don't have a large cash reserve. So then you need more active income than passive. So you need to flip or wholesale, or become more productive with whatever you're doing, so someone will pay you more. And then now the people who work with us, they have cash machines. It's a prerequisite to get into our program, and so they don't have a cash flow problem. Like, I'll be talking to a doctor, a lawyer, some IT sales guy, and they're making $500,000 a year. And they're like, I want cash flow. And I'm like, why? You make $500,000 a year. Like, your bigger expense is your tax liability. Like, what can be done to mitigate your tax liability? And then the other big expense you have right now is inflation. You're making a ton of money. You don't know where to deploy your cash. And so your cash is just getting chewed up by inflation. And then three, to become wealthy, here's the bottom line. I don't know if we've said this yet in a podcast. I don't think you can become wealthy with your own money, especially your own after-tax money, because you just get too much chewed up. So you have to find a way, if you want to be wealthy, you have to find a way to responsibly use other people's money. So
in the last episode on tax advantages, you said that taxes are the greatest destroyer of wealth. How does that compare with inflation?
I'd say taxes is still worse. Inflation's going to chew it up at around, right now, 8 to 10% a year. A lot of people, they're going to lose half their cash this year to taxes. And so back to my thought about, I got some guy making $500,000 a year, and he's like, I want $300 to $400 from a rental house. I'm like, dude, that's a drop in the bucket for you. What do you care? Now, I get it. When you want to retire, you need cash flow. I understand that completely. But here's the math. If you're buying assets based off year one cash flow, I'm going to get into it later in the podcast, but when you take on an asset with 30-year fixed mortgage, that means you have certainty that your principal and interest payment is going to be the same every year, forever and ever. But because of inflation, rents are going to go up and the house is going to appreciate. So it's almost like a sailboat. When you buy a rental house, you open up your inflation sales, and then inflation carries you because it raises the rents and it also makes the house appreciate. So you protect yourself. I love
that analogy.
You like that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
When I do it on a PowerPoint, I do a picture of Tommy Boy on his sailboat.
Nice. So that goes back to what you were saying in one of the previous episodes, around like kind of the duty of man not to escape, and like,
well, that's the other thing, man. I'm getting a little ahead of myself on the podcast, but so you got these high income earners, or you'll have some low income earners who don't have a cash machine. They're like, I don't want to work, I don't want to carry on in my field. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I made a mistake when I first started turnkeying. I sold a house. I don't know how he qualified, but I sold a house to an Uber driver. This guy literally didn't want to work. And then he thought taking on debt and getting cash from our house would absolve him of the obligation to work. And then that's just not good. And then back to the $500,000 earning doctor. I'm like, bro, you're too productive for real estate to ever replace your income, at least in the first 10 years. Now,
from a cash flow perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you're going to grind away and keep trying. But if you were to buy a certain set of rentals, keep them for 10 years, then sell them after 10 years, I do think you would replace a substantial amount of your income. And we're also going to get into a thing called equity milling that would help.
Okay. And that's again, throwing up the inflation sale and letting it run for 10 years.
Yeah.
Then you can retire or something like that.
Yeah. And
but
then,
if you're just worried about the $300, $400 a month from a rental, one, it's not really going to work, or you need to stop trying to escape your life. And
then here's what happened with me. I got into real estate thinking the whole Kiyosaki thing, and I know I beat this horse to death, that I could buy a certain amount of rentals that would equal my expenses, and then I could go live on the beach. and it was a horrible idea. And then Jason Medley told me, hey, passive income comes after hyperactive active income. You better get off your ass and start working. And so I did. And as I did, I started having more fun again, and I started getting more productive, and my income rose. And then, I got my cash reserve, and then in a safe way, Susie and my expenses rose. It's not like we're like buying Gucci bags, but like, hey, working hard, we like nice things. So what do you call that? Your cost of living went up.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, we weren't being irresponsible, because there's the whole FIRE method that says, keep your expenses super low, like completely forever. And then your expenses are so low and you build up your assets that one day you don't have to work. And I'm like, so I'm not supposed to enjoy me and my kids and my wife right now so that one day I can elusively live on the poverty line but not work. I was just like, I think I'll just go back to work. That sounds like fun, actually.
Well, it's funny because right before we started recording this podcast, you sent that text about the story of Jonah from Jordan Peterson. It seems like it's totally related here.
Yeah. Should we just, by the way, greatest book ever, plug. It's Jordan Peterson's new book. We're going to get off topic. You're going to make me tangent, Jake.
The weave. You're doing the weave.
It's called, let's see if I can weave. See if I got it in me. You know who can really weave is Peterson.
Oh.
He's very good at that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just read this quote. Thank you, Jake. Good prompt. All right, so for those of you who don't know the story of Jonah, we don't have time in the podcast to go through it, but it's a great story from the Bible. So what Peterson writes, what is the moral story? I did not see this podcast going this way, talking about cash flow. But what is the moral story of Jonah? It's that each man is called upon to say his piece, lest the world suffer in absence of that singular and unique truth. That every man who fails to offer his best and who hides his light and his talent leaves a hole in the world that the offering of his best could have filled, a failure that is on him, that every person bears a responsibility to keep the ship of state afloat, to repent even in the depths of hell, and to journey to the very place where destiny is trying to make itself manifest. Cash flow, my friend Jake, is an obstacle to that.
Whoa. That is a hot take. Like you said at the very beginning, you're going to say some things that were going to ruffle the feathers of some listeners, but I wasn't thinking you're going to say that. Can you like break that down?
Well, yeah. So
obstacle. That's a strong statement.
Well, when I was tempted and allured by cash flow equals expenses, you're rich, it was to intend. Here, give me a second. Peterson has the word for it.
Okay.
But it was to intend so that I didn't have to get challenged and I didn't have to offer my best.
You didn't have to give your singular and unique voice to the world.
Yes. And then luckily, Jason motivated me to keep moving and to keep growing and to face challenges and go to abysses. And now I'm the fun, jolly guy on this podcast right now. Sure. Have I taken a few punches in the face? Yes. But tip to raising boys shouldn't spend their whole life never getting punched in the face, metaphorically or literally. And then 2, do I have a few scars? Yeah, but now those are cool stories that I get to talk about on a podcast.
Absolutely. Wow.
So back to this guy making $500K. It's like, dude, you're too productive to live off cash flow inside 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then quite frankly, we'll get in, we talked about this in passive income paradox. You become so productive that the goal is to never have to quit, but you do have I do have net worth because of rentals. I do have cash flow because of rentals, but it's not cash flow it's basically cash flow that I'm going to take a cool vacation on this year from, but it's nothing that could change my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Right now.
Well,
yeah.
I've owned my portfolio for 7 years now, and I've already taken $750,000 line of credit that I use to flip houses. It has been earth-shattering. It has been world-changing ability to produce, but it has not been mailbox money.
Right.
And people who know that they want to win in real estate 4 ways and that cash flow is the one that comes later, they're generally very happy and very pleased. But the people who I once sold somebody to a house and 90 days later, they're like, I don't have any cash flow. What's going on? And those people are the most unhappy.
I think they need to listen to the Main Street Patriot podcast. That's what needs to happen.
Well, everybody needs to listen to Main Street Patriot podcast, Jake.
Yeah.
So maybe I've got my knees over my skis, but I do think we should define cash flow for people.
Yeah. We can catch everybody up to you.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Wow, I already went on a rant and quoted Peterson and the Bible before I even got into the basics. So here's the deal. Cash flow is the cash left over after all your expenses are paid. So your rent is your top line. Then you take out your mortgage, you take out your insurance, you take out your utilities, you take out your maintenance. Whatever's left over is the cash flow.
Right.
And then, we talked about, we beat this horse to death, that, the rich dad, poor dad myth is that once your cash flow equals your expenses, you can quit.
But that's his idea of financial freedom.
Yes.
Right.
Which we beat up a lot in this podcast too. But now cash flow is cool, and it's there. It's a nice cherry on top. And the great thing about cash flow is you don't have to sell the asset in order to experience it. Generally to get a return in crypto, and I know there's some dividend producing stocks, but there's not a lot out there. But generally to experience a return on something, you have to sell it. And the way I like to invest, I don't like having to pile up a big pile of assets and then sell it down. That makes me nervous and I don't like it. So that is what I do like about cash flow. I do love about real estate. You can experience returns without selling it. This is where I believe the Main Street Patriot is authentic than most of the real estate education market. Are you ready for this, Jake?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what your first year is like when you buy rentals when it comes to cash flow?
I know what I want it to be.
What do you want it to be?
You're getting some mailbox money. It's not much, but you want to get some so that just in case there's some incidents that happen, you got something to cover it. You're not pulling money out of the reserves.
Yeah, I get that. You want to be cash flow positive. But here's the deal. If you're investing for cash flow, your first year in rentals, regardless of the interest rate, your first year of rentals is like watching paint dry. It's miserable. Like if that's what you're looking for, the other way I can compare rentals is like 9-year-old baseball. So Jake, I got 3 boys, and picture yourself. It's July. It's 100 degrees out, and I love my boys, and I like baseball. I don't love it, but I like it.
Yeah.
And your first year of your kid playing kid pitch is so boring. Here's the deal. Like half the kids are scared of the ball.
Right.
Then the kids who can pitch, half of them can't control the ball.
Right.
And so if the kid stands there with a bat and just avoids getting hit, he's got an 80% chance of walking. And then there's going to be a pass ball, so he'll steal second. Then he'll steal third, and then there'll be another pass ball. And you might as well, as soon as the kid goes up to bat, just tell him he can walk around the bases and score.
Yeah, that is painful.
And so, but wait. So this will be, Johnny is 9. This is the last year I'm doing this. But why do I go to those games when they're 9?
It's an investment, I assume. Like you're investing in your son, that relationship.
I'm investing in my kid, and now my oldest boy's 13, and those games are pretty interesting and a lot of fun, and it looks like baseball. Mm-hmm. But so
we got
to go through this miserable year 3 times to experience the fun of 13-year-old baseball. And then Tommy's 11. 5th grade baseball is pretty fun too. And so you just got to get the kid, the batters not to be scared of the ball, and you got to get the pitchers some semblance of control for it to be fun. And it takes about a year. And that's what investing in rental real estate is like.
Do you mean from the perspective of a new buyer is going to be really eager to get those assets, and like they're going to have to be a bunch they say no to?
No, I mean as in like if I was some guru selling like, oh my God, you're going to feel your cash flow going up and you're going to feel euphoric and you're going to be rich one day. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, you're going to get wealthy doing this strategy, but it's going to take time.
Okay. No instant gratification.
No, just like in the tax episode. The IRS is not an instant gratification business.
Right.
Wealth building is not instant gratification. That's why it requires if we go back to Peterson, a bunch of responsibility and a bunch of work. Right.
Yeah. Patience.
So
real estate is not an instant gratification business.
No, nothing that really is good in life is.
Boom. Wow.
We're getting very profound all day here on the Main Street Patriot. So here, what is cash flow in the beginning of the year? My opinion is that cash flow is simply the permission slip. And, you don't want to be feeding the meter all day. You don't want to be coming out of your own pocket to cover your mortgage. You want the tenant to be able to cover your mortgage. So you need your assets to be cash flow positive. That doesn't mean it has to be $500 the first year. It means like, hey, I want to be able to put something in reserve. It needs to be a few $100 with the expectation that I'm going to put that in reserve in case anything bad happens to the house or the tenant, and it's not really going to affect my lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
And so really the purpose of cash flow is to give you a lever to access the other three pillars. You know, if you're feeding the meter every month, it's going to lower your morale. It's going to really lower your returns. But if you get that house that's cash flow positive, it allows you to open up your inflation sales. It gives you the opportunity to use other people's money responsibly. It gets you the tax advantages, and it puts you in the game for opening in your inflation sales and getting that appreciation and building that wealth. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like a litmus test to say, hey, this probably isn't a good deal if I have to spend $300 of my own money every month. Mm-hmm. And then cash flow will also give you staying power because the three other benefits are only realized if you stay in the game. And if you are feeding the meter every month, you're going to lose morale and you're going to want to quit.
Right. So you talked about the four pillars of wealth building, which we already went through, and in a sense, four ways to win. And kind of just by definition, if you're going to get an asset, it should cash flow. That's just sort of that basic litmus test. Like if it doesn't cash flow, it's not an asset. But that's not like the main way you're going to win, at least not for a while.
Yeah, like if you have a large cash reserve and then you're bullish on the market, then yeah, maybe you can take one that's cash flow negative and sustain that for a few years, and you're going to hold off for the long-term appreciation. Like, that's cool too.
That's a different game.
I would not make cash flow your main deciding factor on buying a deal or not buying a deal. I also wouldn't look at your portfolio if you've owned it for like 2 or 3 years and judge its success or failure based off cash flow. Anytime, I guess what I'm really trying to get people to do is look at their cumulative return amongst the four pillars.
Right.
That's how I think an investor should think. You know, that's what I'm promoting to the market.
Right. Absolutely. No, it makes sense. Especially for, like you talked about, like people that are very productive for society and being rewarded as such. And then they need to combine that with that patriotic duty of owning real estate.
Well, it's not a patriotic. I joke about it. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but I think people have a patriotic duty to get 20, 30-year mortgages because that's the only subsidy the government's ever going to give them.
Right.
And so we got about 10 more minutes on the podcast. I want to show people an example of what cash flow also looks like at 10 years. And so for the basic plan that I like to put most people on, there's a lot of higher achievers that come in and they buy 20 really fast. But the slow end of this is to buy 2 houses a year for 10 years. And then this is the cherry on top of non-traditional cash flow that you'll also have. So once you have those 20 units, you have a couple options. You could sell 10 and then pay the 10 you're going to keep off, or you could do a thing called equity milling because 10 years of appreciation, Jake, is some substantial wealth, right? And then generally people want to change wealth into liquidity. And so I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but this equity milling concept is how a lot of people, this is how the real cash flow happens, and that this is the kind of cash flow you can bet on. Make sense? Okay, so here's the basic premise. You buy 2 houses a year for 10 years. You got 20 homes. And then I'll just run these numbers that you buy $250,000 houses in the Midwest. Year 1, you pay $300K, right? You buy your down payment on a $150,000 house is $30,000. So you put in $60,000. You have $250,000 houses. Your portfolio value at this point is $300,000. Now, you do this for the next 10 years. Year 11, here's what happened. The house appreciates at 5%. So the new market value of those 2 houses is $494,000. Your remaining mortgage on this, because you put your down payment in and then your tenants are still paying it down, your remaining mortgage is around $204,000. So you have $289,000 worth of equity in this house. Pretty sweet for 10 years on a $60,000 investment. And so at this point, you'll do a cash. Year. Sorry, go ahead.
Per year. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying
it's still the 2 houses. Years. Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
And so you have $289,000 worth of equity. At that point, you'll do a 75% cash out refi. So your new mortgage is now $370,000. Your remaining mortgage is $204,000, and you'll do a cash out refi of $166,000. And now that's very interesting because that $166,000 is tax free, and very few people know this. But like wealthy people like Jeff Bezos, they don't live off their paycheck from Amazon. It's because it's too expensive. What they do is they take lines of credit off their assets. And think about it. It's better for them to pay 8% at the current rate. They probably get better rates than this, but it's better for them to pay 7 to 8% of interest on the money than it is to pay 50% in tax. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So 10 years from now, if you do want to retire, you would take this cash because it's tax-free as opposed to paying 30 to 50% tax on earned income. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so then the next question is like, cool, that was year 11, Jimmy. What do I do? Well, you do the same thing in year 12. And so now your year 2 houses have appreciated to 320. They have a market value of 519. You do another 75% cash out refi, and you get 172K tax free. And then you do that year 13, you do the year 3 houses, year 4. And now this is just a simulation. It's not exactly precise on how people are doing this. It's just showing a concept and options. Does that make sense, Jake?
Yep.
And so then the next question would be, okay, cool. I did that for years 13, 14, 15, 16, years 13 through 20. What do you do year 21? Any idea?
Another cash out refi?
Yeah, your year 1 houses have now recharged in equity. And so this is just a constant equity milling process where you guys take that cash flow. And
Yeah.
The refi from year 11, the tenants pay down. The house continues to appreciate at 5%. Your inflation sales are taking off. And then this is an option you have as an investor. And options are the tool of the anti-fragile. And so here's the deal. I love cash flow, but I don't need it. Cash flow is simply the permission slip to pay the mortgage, pay for repairs. I get income from cash out refis and also to put some cash in my pocket. And then here's the other thing.
Dang.
You like that, right?
That's powerful. Yeah. No, it helps me understand too now like how powerful that is as a permission slip.
Yeah. So it's like,
what you mean by that?
You didn't get your $800 quarter 1, but you got this on the long run. Are you gonna, what's the saying? Spite your nose to cut off your nose to spite your face.
That's right.
And then I want to hit one last concept as we finish up on cash flow. But what we're discussing is rents going up, your mortgage staying the same. It's called the cash flow gap. And over time, your cash flow gap opens up because rents go up. But like I said, your mortgage stays the same. And then when I first got into real estate and understood inflation, I thought this was so funny. But when I take a 30-year mortgage, I am going to pay the bank back in garbage dollars. Like the houses I bought in 2015, 16, right now, I'm paying the bank back in garbage dollars. And that's funny to me because I'm paying back with inflated currency, right?
Right. So, but the banks aren't stupid, I assume.
Okay, you can assume that. I don't know. I'm not going to definitively say either way.
All right.
Well, it's not the banks that are stupid, Jake. It's the government.
The government's the one who provides these 30-year fixed mortgages.
No investor in their right mind would give a 30-year note. There's too much volatility in 30 years.
Right.
The only reason it happens is because the government subsidizes it.
Right. They want to incentivize it.
So, yeah, I guess you're right. The bank isn't stupid because they know they're not going to be left with the bag. They know the government will be left with the bag.
If there's such volatility to the point where that 30-year... Well, so the risk is that you won't be able to pay it back because of whatever happens in the market.
No. The risk is you will get paid back, but it won't keep up with inflation.
Oh, for the bank. Yeah.
Yes. So, what does what does a lender want?
Yeah, the lender wants a return on investment beyond inflation.
Well, the lender wants the shortest term loans for the most interest. And we'll get into this on the leverage episode. But what's the borrower want? The borrower wants the longest term loan with the lowest interest.
Right.
And so, yes, the real estate market is completely propped up by the government. So I know I'm a libertarian or a reformed libertarian, and I want the government out of everything, but not out of housing. And when I was in a deep libertarian stage, the reason I got into real estate is because I saw it was propped up by the government, and that made it feel safe to me. Actually, it was a tax revolt for me. I was like, look, if they're going to take half my money, they're going to prop up my investments.
Right.
And so to answer your question is no, the banks aren't stupid.
Yeah.
But they will give a 30-year government-backed loan because, and I don't even think the government's stupid. They realize they're selling the American dream. They realize they can't have people rioting in the streets. But we're getting into another tangent that's not that important. It could go down a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The thing to remember is you're throwing up your inflation sales. You got to get a 30-year mortgage. You got to get 20 of them because it's the best financing ever, and it's government subsidized, and you need 10 years for that cash flow gap to open up. And
then
so
you'll be paying back with the garbage dollars at that point. Yeah.
the highly inflated garbage dollars. The mortgage I pay for the houses I bought in 2015, I need to look at it, but they are the dollar has lost a lot of value in the last 10 years. The dollar's lost a lot of value in the last 5 because of COVID.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about Ray Daly's biggest risk to investors. The biggest risk to investors is that creditors will not make a big enough return to keep up with inflation. And with a 30-year mortgage, they're clearly not.
Right. Yeah, no. I mean, that's why you're winning as an investor.
Yeah. So they're like, hey, you don't want to be in real estate because you don't get cash flow like year one? Okay, good call. Whatever. And so at the end of the day, like, my year one performer, I got to have cash flow. That's playing checkers. If you want to get wealthy, you got to play chess. You got to understand the financial jujitsu you need to do in order to win in 4 ways, and how that cumulative return and that cumulative compounding 4-way return, that's why real estate's the greatest wealth producer ever. So I see a lot of people not getting in the game and passing up on good deals, good solid investments because of this cash flow obsession.
Yeah. Wow. Well, hopefully after they listen to this episode, they will realize that is a very skewed and limited way of looking, and you're doing a real analysis of what their opportunity is with real estate.
Yeah, it's like playing checkers versus chess. So you think we beat this horse to death? Are we ready to shut it down?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is good.
So if you guys found value in this podcast, or you're interested in more Main Street investing, we do have a free Facebook group called Main Street Patriot, Get Wealthy on Main Street. Also, if you think you want to start building a rental portfolio, there'll be a link in the show notes for you to schedule a time with a team member of mine to hop on a call. We'll see if this is the right fit for you. And then if you found value in this podcast, I'd appreciate it if you like, shared, and subscribed. And then thank you for your time and attention today.
See you next time, guys.
See you guys. So if you like what you heard today and you want to learn more, sign up for a discovery call with one of the Vreeland Capital success coaches at jimmyvreeland.com.